Before we get started, yes, my ear tab is up basically the entire video. I only notice it in the closing thoughts. So if that's going to distract you, just listen to this video like it's a podcast or just look at my beautiful face. Okay, thank you. Bye. I've been dead talking for a good 6 minutes and it was not recording at all. This is a great day for my attention deficit. Hello, everyone. It's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? Happy Saturday. If you're new to my channel, I don't usually talk about reality shows on here, save for Love is Blind, because it's a mess, and I've been obsessed since it started, but particularly since the last season, because something about season 3 is truly some of the most stuff I've ever seen on television in recent memory. It was the first season that I decided to make any video on Love is Blind on my channel, and so many of you guys were obsessed with the mess that was Love is Blind season 3 that when they announced that they were doing a season 4, people were like, are you gonna make a video on it? When's the video coming out on it, Kendall? Kendall, are you making a video on it? So here we are. I didn't think it was possible to get any more chaotic than last season. But that's truly my fault for doubting the Lachey's and Netflix. So here we are. We're talking about season 4. As of recording, the first 5 episodes are now live. And bitch, it is truly the summit of foolishness so far. And we have a lot to talk about. Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going on a trip to our favorite rocket ship, running through the skies, little Einstein. Sorry, am I gonna keep that in? Dog! I got a comment. Was that last week or the week before? Where somebody was like, not me thinking I was getting entertained by a neurotypical. Girl, you not. It's just a seal with symbols in here and I'm just ignoring it most of the time. Oh my God. What was I talking about? Love is Blind, season 4, yeah? Okay, let's talk about it. But before we get started, as usual, we have bills. We're gonna send it over to ad roll Kenny, which is right now, Kenny, because I forgot to film it ahead of time. Yeah. Smooth. Hello everyone, it's Admiral Kenny, and today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit delivery service that offers you fresh, delicious, healthy meals delivered straight to the comfort of your own home. With pre-portioned, pre-selected, pre-shopped for ingredients, you're able to get a meal on the table in give or take 20-30 minutes, and it's always fire. And you can get it even cheaper if you head over to HelloFresh.com and use code Kennie50 for 50% off plus free shipping. So many of the recipes that I cook just regularly now, even without HelloFresh, have come from HelloFresh. And rest assured, it is much more expensive if you buy the ingredients separately, and it's very annoying. Also, you have to go to the grocery store. Ew. What are we, in the Stone Ages? I have so many favorite meals now from HelloFresh that I could, like, list them off. Anything with cavatappi, I'm a fan. Anything with chicken sausage, I'm also a fan. The banh mi tacos are fire. The tilapia with scallion sriracha pesto. I love a flatbread from them. Anything on toast. And let me tell you something. If you've ever wanted to have a quick lunch, but the best salad of your life, do a HelloFresh recipe. The soups are fire. It's all good. Also, if you have food restrictions, like you're vegetarian or vegan, or you're watching your calories, watching your carbs, whatever, you can do that with HelloFresh as well. I don't care. I just want it to taste good. So if you would like to check out HelloFresh, go to HelloFresh.com and use code Kennie50 for 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Big thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery. So again, like I said last time, I recapped the craziness that was season 3 of Love is Blind. I will link those videos down below if you care to see them for whatever reason, but we need to live in the present. You can go back to those later because right now we're in some mess, okay? I, of course, was really excited to see this season. Again, I expected it to take a little longer for the new season to come, but since we're here, let's jump right in because there's much to discuss. And discuss we shall, because again, this season is messy in a way that I'm not particularly used to. I can't get a read on certain people very well, and I just have kind of these knee-jerk reactions to them. And I'm saying that because I could definitely see my opinions being subject to change, but as I've watched the first 5 episodes, I'm seeing that that's how it seems to be going. And so that's why we're making this video in real time and not waiting until the season's all the way done. So maybe if we come back for a part 2 in 2 weeks or so, give or take, I might have different opinions. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Love is Blind, basically the premise of the reality show, it is a reality show, is that they go to a major city. They've gone to Chicago, was it Dallas? This season, I believe, is Seattle. While there, they bring together singles, men and women, and what they do is they give them like 10 days to be completely sensorily deprived. They don't have their phone, they don't have access to the outside world, nothing. They devote that entire 10 days to dating, speed dating, but not just speed dating in pods where they cannot see the person on the other side. And at the end of those 10 days, they're expected to have built a deep connection to such a degree that they propose to each other. After they get out of the pods, after they're engaged, they're allowed to see each other for the first time. And then they live with each other for give or take 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, they have a wedding at which they say dramatically, I do or I don't at the altar. It's very messy. Love it. Again, last season, I thought we couldn't get any worse than that, but I need to learn at some point that there's always space for humanity to disappoint me more. So let's first talk about notable cast members for this season. Let's talk about the women first. We have Amber, 34. Amber is nice, I guess. There are some little things about her personality that I find her slightly passive aggressive, but you know, based off of what they showed on camera, overall, she seemed like a cool person, but there's some things that just kind of was like, I could see why someone would be like, that's kind of icky that she would feel that way. But for the most part, she's kind of fine. I feel relatively neutral about Amber. Next, we have Bliss, who's 33. Really pretty girl. I really like her. She seems really nice, really smart, really nurturing. Seems very ready for the marriage thing, because that's another thing. A lot of people come on the show and it's pretty obvious that they are not ready. They're not ready at all. But she seems very like aware of how this is going to go. Also, girl, what bra do you buy? I know your back is in pain, honey, but if you got recommendations, send it your girl's way. I'd really appreciate it. Chelsea, 31. I really like Chelsea. I could feel a very strong earth sign energy from her, and then I found out she was a Taurus, so I was correct. I have a 1 in 4 chance of that being right, so I guess I shouldn't like gloat too much about it. But she has a very like dry, matter-of-fact personality. Tell it like it is, but not in like a catty way. She's just very dry. It also doesn't come off as if she does anything necessarily for TV. She's just, again, very matter-of-fact type energy. I like Chelsea. Irina, 26, is someone that I would consider on the complete opposite spectrum. Gives very miserable, catty, childish, to some degree malicious. I don't like the energy, and I'm not a fan of the energy. She seems very like mean girl in high school that has no other purpose than to be mean. I don't know. I didn't like that. Micah, 27. So Micah ends up being like very close best friends with Irina, the girl that I was just talking about. And she is also, I would argue, just as bad as Irina, but she's a lot better at hiding it. She has a lot more moments of seeming like she's not a bad person, and then she is. She has moments of introspection, moments of being very like direct and kind and seemingly being emotionally attuned to the situation, being mature about things, and then she'll do some like weird catty high school. Yeah, they both give mean girl duo. Irina is more overt with it, and in a way she kind of ends up feeling like a henchman to some degree, a lackey to Micah, and sometimes she's able to divert because of that. I think Micah's able to. This is just how I'm reading it as of right now. Maybe my opinion will change, but that they both are miserable. Jacquelina, I love Jacquelina. 27. She is very funny, very real. I'm rooting for her though, because she also strikes me as the type of bitch who will horribly self-sabotage herself. And as a fellow Capricorn, because I saw your tattoo, I know how it is. Don't do it. I hope you didn't do it. I guess this was filmed like 2 years ago. You probably already did it if you did. But I hope you don't. Hilarious. She funny as hell. And then Tiffany, 37. I love Tiffany. She seems like, when you had like there was a girl in high school and what you remembered from her is just being like a cool mother, like just real cool, like real nice, but not in that like trying to people please type way, but just like genuinely really nice. That's how I feel about Tiffany. I think of all of them, she's the most ready to be married. She has this kind of vibe of being, the most secure in a way. So those are the women. Now let's talk about the men. Starting off with Brett, 36. He's my favorite guy this season. He seems really genuine and kind. He has a very inspiring story. Fine as But yeah, he seems very genuine, very cool, very focused. I do clock some things about maybe him needing to work through giving and expressing love could be a bit of an issue for him. I'm curious about. But yeah, he's my favorite so far. With that said, last season I had a favorite and was very disappointed. So you better not disappoint me, but we will see, won't we? But I like him a lot right now. He's very attractive and he seems like a genuinely great person. After that, we have Josh, 31. I don't really have anything to say about this dude. He's just kind of like a minor plot line, but I felt like it was kind of weird to not mention him. Marshall. So Marshall's 27. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about Marshall. He seems nice, a bit extra, like a lot of reading of poetry. And I mean, he could be into poetry. I guess there's nothing inherently disingenuous about that. Someone said in the show that he reminds people of a young Will Smith, and that makes me like him more because I couldn't put my finger on like what energy I was getting. And then when they said that, I was like, this man is a Libra, isn't he? And then I looked it up. Yes, he is. Because Will Smith is a Libra. I'm like, there's an energy that I'm not quite used to. I've become that bitch, haven't I? I've become the astrology. Oh God. Oh, how the tables have turned. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, I don't believe in astrology. I'm like, what? And now here I am noticing and clocking things. There is a bit of a science to this, I guess, a little bit. What can I say? Excess of him, I guess, comes off to me as disingenuous, but it's not necessarily so. But he seems very in touch with his emotions. I thought he was either a Libra or a Cancer. Those were the ones that my brain was going towards, and he's a Libra. But he seems to be very in touch with his emotions. So far, what we've seen, he seems to be quite supportive and articulate. I'm still working through like how I feel about him in particular. Paul, 29, same with him. I can't get a great read on Paul, good or bad. He just seems a bit blank. He's a environmental scientist, which maybe to some degree that's a STEM aspect. I don't know. I've met STEM people that had personality. I don't know. Or maybe we're just not seeing the depths of his personality on camera. Like, he's cute, but again, kind of blank, kind of boring. Zach, 31. Again, another kind of blank person for me. I will note though that several of the women in this season have vocalized at some point, either in the pods or outside of it, that they do not like Zach. I don't 100% know why that is. So I'm assuming it's something off camera that we're not seeing. So it's hard for me to feel one way or another about him because I'm not seeing him do anything, but I keep hearing this feedback, if that makes sense, where they're just like, I don't like that dude. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about Zach, but he's there. Last but not least, we have Kwame, 33. This sucks. And I hate, again, non-black people don't engage in this. I hated him immediately. And I hated that it was going to be 2 seasons in a row of African men being the fucking worst. But alas, for those of you that didn't know about last season, because this is more of something that happened on the tail end after everything went down past the reunion or whatever, came out that SK was a cheating dog. And now we have Kwame, who is giving a similar vibe. Okay, so that's the whole notable cast for this season. Of course, there were more people, but those people presumably didn't have much of an impact to be seen on camera very much. So these are the only people you really need to know. Episode episode 1, we're all back in the pods. You know the deal. Everyone gets in there, they do a speed dating thing, and they start making connections, okay? The first connection we see is between Chelsea and Kwame. And Kwame talks a bit about his background. Kwame says that he was a professional soccer player, but he had a career-ending injury that brought him back to the States. But now he's the head of a software company's business department. And again, as I was saying before, I hated that this was my first thought, but I was like, I don't like him. There was a few things that he said that kind of made me go, If you recall in our last video of Love is Blind season 3, when I was doing the breakdown of finding out that SK cheated and how, you know, his ex-fiance Raven was talking about how she found out about it or whatever, we brought up very quickly about how SK gave this vibe of like, I want to do Love is Blind because white girls don't like me because I'm black. And we talked briefly about how that's a bit of a dog whistle that's like, black dude looking specifically for white women validation. And that is partially what this is, but I think more so than anything in Kwame's case, it just reads off someone who's in desperate need of validation in general, because he will do a lot of things for the sake of validation, and that makes him the worst. Oh my God. And I'm saying this from a place of empathy. I was once the worst. Arguably, sometimes I still am if I'm a little bit bored and want validation. You can do the dumbest shit in dating. I've been really reflecting on this a bit because I got back on Hinge. And I dated some like people that I at no point was actually that interested in, but I wanted them to validate me so bad that you don't actually ask yourself, what are you fighting so hard for? That is Kwame. And maybe that's why I get such a visceral response from him. I'm like, stop it. Ugh! And I knew he was going to be a fucking menace. And psychic. It don't really take much to be psychic. It's just like an insecure man, particularly black, particularly who's been made to feel lesser specifically for his blackness in the dating realm, who feels displaced and unwanted, and who has undoubtedly done no healing in regards not a damn bit in regards to those feelings to kind of like deal with it. He just instead went on a reality show. So this is going to be a fucking mess.
There's also a point where he says that he was going to use the fake name Alex because he didn't want his name Kwame to put him in, quote, a certain box, which is like, okay.
So then he starts making a connection with Micah. Again, Micah is the one that seems pretty awful to me, but I didn't know that yet at this point. But I kind of clocked it because she called herself an empath. And just like jokingly, people are like, when someone calls themselves an empath, they tend to be terrible people. But he starts to make a connection with Micah. He seems to put her like as his number one very quickly. I'm so fascinated to actually know what it was, because he doesn't really say, and we won't see it because I'm sure that's a long process of them connecting and talking or whatever. But it seems that whatever happened after their first like day, essentially, he was smitten with Micah. But Micah's a lot more reserved than he is. And she's like, you know, testing the waters. That's the purpose of doing this. And she starts to hit things off with Paul. Again, I don't really get a good read on him one way or another. I think he's like that kind of like Midwestern hot. He's Michigan hot. There's nothing really much to say about him. I will say he seems to be very prone to like, and this could just be like his flirting style and nothing to really think much about it, but he does have a tendency to say like, when we get married and stuff like that. And I personally find that off-putting. They seem to think it's just funny because you are going on Love is Blind. The goal is to get married. So it's kind of like a when we get married, you know. But if it was just like a guy you're meeting and he's like, yeah, when we get married, he's like, ugh. So Paul and Micah hit it off, but Paul also starts to hit it off with Amber, who's a flight attendant, and he travels a lot for his work. So they have that in common. So they seem to have quite a good connection. Who else hits it off? Tiffany and Brett starts to hit it off. These two are the two that I have the best vibe about because they just seem to be both very driven and successful. I think most importantly, they seem to be the couple that takes this shit seriously and are actually trying to find love, ask the questions that matter, build connection, and get married. There is some indication with Brett that he had a hard time growing up Like he, at some point or another, either throughout his entire childhood or a part of his childhood, he was living in poverty. It made him very introverted, and he started to draw, particularly shoes. And that's actually what led to the career that he has, presumably working at Nike, if I'm not mistaken. So he's very successful now, but he has this kind of background that was in some ways very stunted, and he's trying to learn how to give and receive love, like verbally, because I love you weren't words that he really said a lot growing up. I think of all people, I think Tiffany would be the most patient with that. But I really liked how they were getting along, and it would seem that they don't really focus on other people. They're pretty like, I want you, you want me. Like, I'm good. Okay, Irina and Zach begin to hit it off. This is the first hint that apparently Zach rubs the girls the wrong way in some ways. Apparently, she goes in and she says like, oh, the girls have very polarizing opinions of you. Some of them really like you and some of them really don't. All we see him do is make like really shitty jokes about like, when he goes in, he's like, oh, I'm a stripper, but he's not a stripper. He's a criminal defense lawyer. And I guess some people don't like that he did that, and some people think it's funny. So again, he creates this like polarizing vibe towards him. But in the pods, he begins to talk to Irina, and he ends up reaching a bit of a vulnerable stage on like day 2 or 3 or something like that, where he's like, oh, we have to start, opening up more. I have 10 days to find a wife. Fair. And then he does what in any other context I would consider trauma dumping. But considering, again, y'all don't have much time, I guess you got to cut to it. I grew up moving place to place to place because my mother was a single mom and she was a stripper. A subconscious or conscious way of seeing like, are you okay with how I was raised? Because some women were very strong about like, oh no, strippers, and some were like, oh, I don't care. And so I would imagine in some way he used that as a gauge to figure out what type of person you were, how judgmental you were. But he says she would do that to literally feed him, and that she would like break down because she didn't have the money to take care of him. And then she eventually passed away. He doesn't say anything in regards to like what led to her passing, but he's like, and then for years after that, I was just on autopilot, and I became a lawyer, and I've just been, focusing presumably on just being successful. But in the past, in dating, people I've dated, their family have judged me because of how I was raised, and that always really hurt me. He also begins to hit it off with Bliss. He seems to really be attracted to her intellectually. They end up having the same very, very random favorite song, and the song is like very meaningful to them. So that was a big sentimental connection for both of them, and they seem to be like hitting it off like crazy. Now, one of the things about this season that I didn't see a whole lot in past seasons, again, or not to my memory, is like tension between the cast members, like between the women's in the women's quarters and the men in the men's quarters. Because this season gets weirdly catty. Micah and Irina seem to become friends very quickly. And again, if you recall, those two are miserable. Irina is more overtly so, and in a way that's not particularly artful or nuanced, whereas Micah seems a lot more manipulative. This is how I'm reading it. This is just how I'm reading it. But they do seem similarly catty. That starts to come out a bit because the women are all in the same women's quarters. You can kind of hear who one woman is interested in, and then if 2 women are interested in him, and it's like meh, meh. Chelsea and Micah are aware of each other, and they're both aware that they have some interest in Kwame. Chelsea is a lot more vocal to Kwame about wanting him. She seems to have a very like singular vision of him, whereas Micah is going back and forth between Kwame and Paul and hasn't landed definitively on Kwame. But it would seem that there's some tension between Chelsea and Micah because they're both, at least to some degree, either fully or at least very strongly interested in Kwame. It gets a little tense in the green room, it would seem. Chelsea's like, I'm all in. I want you. I don't want anybody but you. Like, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do it. And he gives her this kind of like non-committal, like, it's feeling good. It's feeling real good. Though I'm not a fan of Kwame, and I'm aware that from the jump I had a vibe about Kwame. I didn't even touch on his just general demeanor. I don't love his general vibe outside of things that he does. He just has a way about him that I find very irritating. I do understand why he doesn't want to be like, yeah, well, in a way he does. Depending on how you read it, it could sound like he's like, yeah, I'm in it with you, specifically Chelsea. But the way I read it was more of like a very non-committal, like, it's feeling good, let's keep dating people, And the reason why he's doing that is because he wants Micah. He wants Micah more. The thing that I find kind of slimy, and I don't know to what degree he can avoid this sliminess. I guess he could just straight up say no to Chelsea and just say, no, I'm 100% all in with Micah. But the reason he hasn't done that is because Micah hasn't said that she's all in with him. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a pickle, I'm sure. With that said, what he does do is he goes to Micah and he's like, hey, I've been making a really good connection with someone else, talking about Chelsea. And essentially what it all boiled down to is like, she validates me, again, going back to the whole, like, she tells me how much she wants to be with me. She validates how much she likes me. I don't really know how things are with you, Micah. And Micah ends up saying, like, I didn't recognize that you had another person that you were so connected to. And you talk a lot about how strong our connection is. I'm not saying to stop talking to her by any means, but what I'm saying is, like, I'm kind of confused where this other person came from, because I didn't know you were connecting that much with another person. She just kind of popped up, and she's, again, so vocal about how much she likes me, which is the issue. It's like, you don't like her that much. You just like that she really likes you. That's how I read it, but maybe he does. Honestly, Micah, I want to propose to you earlier. I want to propose now. Like, I know that you're the person I want to be with. The proposal was very confusing to me because weren't you just in there with Chelsea talking about how good, everything is? But I guess though he felt that, he, I guess, could simultaneously feel that and still know he's like, I want to be with Micah. And she's like, I'm not going to lie to you. I've also had a connection with someone else, and Paul is the person she's referring to. And she refers to her connection with Paul as like a slow burn. She didn't like see it coming. It kind of crept up on her. I don't want to rush into accepting your proposal without knowing for sure. We don't have to rush this. Hate it or love it, that's fair, I think. Again, we only here for 10 days. You can't wait 4 more days. If you think I'm the one you want to be with, you can't wait. He's an Aries. Sound like it. It also sounds like an Aries wanting to be with somebody that don't want to be with him that bad. That's very Aries energy. Aries like to pursue and don't give a about what they have. I've learned the hard way. But yeah, it's not unreasonable for her to reach this conclusion. Like, hey, you would want me to be sure, right? You'd want me to be absolutely sure. I'm not absolutely sure. And you deserve someone who's absolutely sure. Back to Paul and Amber. They are chatting. It comes up that she's actually been married before. I think she was married twice. They only show her talking about one of her marriages. Apparently he cheated very soon after they got married, really taught her what she doesn't want to accept and what she doesn't want to continue to do. And then Paul asks if she's ever cheated or would she ever cheat, and she answers honestly, but this is the conversation I'm talking about when I was like, I don't know. She seems nice. I could see her as a person that weaponizes her emotions, and I'm basing that on very little information. Again, I don't know these people. This is just me reacting to what is very edited on TV. What she says is like, she would like to hope she wouldn't, but if she had continued in her last marriage, that is where it would have gone. I don't think that it's right, but I do recognize that it doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like, it's a symptom of something deeper and worse. Ew. Yikes. I would hope that regardless of the issues we have, you would not cheat on me, that you would instead just end the relationship. If it was getting that bad, I would hope you would end it before cheating on me. And she's like, no, that's talking about my past. Like, I would never cheat on you. Oh my God. And then you could tell that she got anxious because he was uncomfortable with her answer, which he would have every right to be uncomfortable with that answer. Then she's kind of like, wow, you make me so anxious. And he was like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. And she was like, joking, but I wonder to what degree she's actually joking. She's like, yeah, you should feel bad about making me anxious. I'm like, I don't like that. There's a vibe about her as well. And I'm just like a passive aggressiveness. But they end the date seemingly on a good note. It doesn't get like big awkward after that. They're able to just continue the date and it ends pleasantly enough. So Amber comes back into the green room, and again, Micah and Irina have made their little mean girl clique, and Micah is interested in Paul, right? So when Amber comes back into the green room with a bunch of like decorations, Mardi Gras theme, gifts of sorts that Paul has given her, Irina kind of goes up to her, and in that like passive aggressive backwards compliment type of way, she's like, oh my God, these are so nice.
Wait, these are so gorgeous. I know, aren't they? These are so pretty. Oh my God, these are so cute and bright, just like you. Looks boring. Mardi Gras?
I hate the energy. It's so bad. Two-faced. And so then after that, Micah goes into the pods with Paul, and she's like, I feel like you aren't all in it with me. If I felt like you were, I would be the same. Which confirmed some suspicions I was having about the reason why she told Kwame to wait wasn't because she wanted more time. It's simply because Kwame was not her number one pick. Her number one pick is Paul. Chelsea, who wants Kwame, who's telling Chelsea to wait because he wants Micah, who's telling Kwame to wait because she wants Paul. Paul is like, no, I actually am all in it with you. And they then decide that they're gonna cut off other people. They're gonna cut off other people, and it's going to be Paul and Micah. Once they've reached this conclusion, Micah then begins this very annoying, are you going to cut her off? When are you going to cut her off? How are you going to do it? Are you going to drag it out? Are you going to wait a long time?
Are you still feeling like sure about that?
Yeah.
Why is your ass so soft? Are you like 100% going to do that tonight? Are you going to drag it out, or are you going to tell her at the beginning of your date?
He doesn't like get annoyed by it. I would. But he was like, or at least visibly annoyed by it. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Trust, you'll see him do it. It's on TV. Like, chill out. And this episode ends with Tiffany saying, I love you to Brett. Again, that's my favorite couple. And he tells her about how he struggles with that word and how it wasn't a word that was used very often growing up. But he's like, I feel you're very special. I feel very deeply for you, Tiffany. But then he doesn't hear anything on the other side because Tiffany fell asleep. My heart dropped. And it dropped a second time because I could definitely see this being me. That would be me. It's a long day of filming. That's a lot of talking to people. I'd be over it. He got a soothing voice. I'd be out like a light. He doesn't hear her, and he takes that really rough because, again, he's not used to being particularly vulnerable. And so he leaves out. He seems very upset. And that's the end of the episode. And I was so mad. I was like, y'all are so cute. Please don't end it on some dumb. She was tired. Okay. Damn. You know, all they do is feed you carbs on set. She was knocked out. She had the itis. Episode 2. Chelsea and another girl come to wake up Tiffany, and she's like, oh my God, where is Brett? They were like, you slept, he left. Yeah, he gone, baby. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Which I will say, this part looked hella scripted, but whatever. So Jacquelina, again, we haven't talked much about her, even though she's, again, one of my favorite people on here because she's very, very funny. She talks a bit more about her connections with Marshall and Josh, but it seems that we end up seeing more of Marshall, which leads me to believe he's going to be the guy that she ends up picking. And it's true, they connect a lot. You know, I don't want to go into the specifics of like what people connect on, because a lot of it ends up just being like sharing trauma. And we don't really see a whole lot of the specifics, but basically they end up deciding that they want to be together. And
I guess I have to break up with my other boyfriends now.
You better kick them to the curb. Tell them Marshall sends love. Kick rocks, motherfucker.
And this was cute. They are cute. Again, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about Marshall. Maybe, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think it's just a personality difference between him and I that makes me think like, he would probably get on my nerves. Tiffany apologizes to Brett for falling asleep on him. And I was like, deadass, are you really gonna say no? Because she was on like a 15-hour filming day. Come on now. You know, they draw it out, make it dramatic. And he was like, it's just gonna be a small thing, a funny story in our very long life together. Would you marry me? And she's like, oh my God, yes. So they end up being the first proposed couple that we see, at least on camera. So back to Kwame and Micah. Again, last episode, Micah decided that she's gonna be with Paul. So now she has to break up with Kwame. And Kwame goes in there thinking, Micah's my number one. Micah's my number one. I like Chelsea because she likes me. But Micah's my number one. But then she goes in, Micah, and is like, I think we should pursue our other connections. Essentially saying she wants to be with Paul. And Kwame takes that very hard. Very, very hard. It's something that I'm trying to not belittle, because I understand that I'm raised in a patriarchal society that does not allow men to cry without being ridiculed, especially when they feel hurt emotionally in like romantic settings, right? And I'm not gonna lie to you, my knee jerk was to laugh. But I'm trying to rewire some of my kind of things that play into patriarchy. And when I really thought about it, I was like, what exactly is funny about a man being rejected and feeling really bad about it? At least at first. And then it started to get very Joker-ish. And that's when I started making fun of him. But at first, him just feeling those emotions and crying, I was like, that hurts. Being rejected hurts, especially on camera, especially after you've made like a big declaration about how much you like them and how you want to propose to them, and then they choose someone else. That hurts. So he ends up crying, sobbing, and it's like, it sucks. It does. So I feel for him. It's a quick conversation. He doesn't cry in the pods. He cries after he leaves. But in front of Micah, he's just like ends it as if he's at a job interview that he got turned down from.
Well, thank you for taking your time, for listening. It was fantastic getting to know you, and I hope that works out for you to the best of your ability. I truly wish you the most luck.
He was like, thanks for this opportunity. And then he leaves, and then he starts bawling. So Micah leaves out. She was like, that was weird. That was quick. Yeah. We're done with that. I guess Paul is in there talking to Amber, letting her down, but mine was very quick. Why is he taking so long? And you can kind of see again that anxiety, that anxiousness that she undoubtedly has, Micah, that insecurity. She's like, what is taking him so long? What is taking him so long? What is taking him so long? Like, oh my God, she gonna get on that man's nerves. Like, I can feel it. She gonna get on that man's nerves in a way that I hope he's ready for. But he's in there talking to Amber, and Amber doesn't know she's about to get dumped. So she's like, you know, all lively and excited to talk to him, and he looks so fucking uncomfortable. It's not fun to break someone's heart, and she's hurt by it. You know, breakups are never easy. So she comes out of the pod and she's crying, and she's talking with, I think, Chelsea or one of the other girls, talking about it and crying in the corner. And them two miserable are over there giddy. They're being like very childish and like, oh my God, yay. Now, Micah, at least more so than Irina, has a little bit of wherewithal to be like, let me fake that I actually feel bad for her, because she does seem hurt. So she says something along the lines of like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm like relieved and like happy about it because I want to be with Paul, but like she is hurting. But then like in the next breath will be like, go, sends Irina over to like listen to what she's crying about. Like, what difference does it make? She obviously got broken up with. So there's this element of actually being like giddy around the pain of others. Again, that like mean girl streak, they're both icky. So yeah, back with Kwame, again, visibly struggling with the breakup. I want to lend some empathy and sympathy towards that part, but then he starts to go full Joker. I was like, oh God, here we go. A man, again, who is obviously struggling with a lot of validation issues and is in no way trying to fix that with a professional, Because out comes Paul, having just broken up with Amber, and Paul is taking it hard because he's like, it's hard to see somebody so full of liveliness and happy to see me, and for me to be the person that ruins their day. It's hard to do that. And there's Kwame just like, oh wonder what that's like. I don't know, who knows what that's like. Not me.
It's tough to be the villain in your own story. It's really funny because with no intention at all, in that moment, it did feel like he was the villain in mine.
So again, Micah and Irina are being miserable, of course. And eventually Chelsea like comes over to Irina in particular, because she was the one that physically went over to like listen in on their conversation. The way they kind of edit it sounds like Chelsea went over and she was like essentially confronting them for being not kind people, particularly Irina. And Irina kind of says like, oh yeah, like I'm just like not nice or whatever. I don't know. And then Chelsea's like, well, have you just do it? Just be nicer. Like she's like, just be kind.
I want to be nicer. I'm like not nice at all.
Why don't you then?
What?
Why don't you then? I heard people that talk bad about one another because they aren't cool with themselves, you know?
Brett and Tiffany meet. They seem to really like each other. They're all like tunnel vision. They're very cute.
Okay, back with Marshall and Jacquelina. They seem really smitten. Jacquelina, again, was interested in Marshall and Josh, and she has decided on Marshall. And she was going to break up with Josh, but she tells Marshall that she couldn't because she got really like overwhelmed about the whole breakup process, again making him feel bad and stuff like that, which seems to be one component that this season they're really struggling with, ending the relationships to pick a person. Probably something that happened in other seasons, they just didn't really talk much about it. But she's like crying to Marshall about how much she was struggling with it because Josh was basically like, if it ain't you, I'm going home. And for whatever reason, either because he made her feel bad or just the situation itself made her feel bad, she felt really bad to the extent that she could not do it. And she didn't want Marshall to be upset at her for not being able to do it. He was like, I'm not upset at you. I'm upset at Josh, because apparently Josh had not been open about how much of a connection he was building with Jackie. So Marshall had no idea. I didn't even know that it had gotten so serious that some other dude was like, I'm gonna pack my stuff up and go home if it's not you, because you know I'm in love with you, blah blah blah. He didn't even know there was another person like that. And I'm sitting here like, this is stupid. If she picked you, she picked you. Propose. Like, who the cares? There's another person. Like, that's dumb. Like, drummed up drama. That is not a thing. But the reason I bring this up though is because Jacquelina comes back to the green room, the women's green room, and she's like sobbing. She was like, I didn't want him to be mad at me because I couldn't end it, but I also felt really bad because I felt guilty for making the other one feel bad, blah, blah, blah. And she's like sobbing. And here comes Micah and Irina, and they're just like laughing. I don't know if this is editing. This could be editing because they're trying to make a villain that keeps people watching or whatever. But there's also an element of them like reveling in people's pain a little bit. Like both of them are like, hey, crying. What? Now that Kwame and Micah are officially done, Kwame now has Chelsea, and Chelsea kind of, I think to some degree, Chelsea is aware on some level or another that she's not Kwame's first choice. And she starts to take that pretty hard because she's like, I've been so open with you. I've been trying to be so patient and trying not to get jealous and I was just being so good. Or that's how I read that, at least. Maybe she meant something else entirely. But she's like, I can't do this anymore. But he's somehow able to reel her back in, apologizing, thanking her for being so validating and affirming and leading their relationship in that way, which is actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, there's something really fucked up about that. Because to turn to her and say, thank you for leading our relationship by affirming me and validating me, asterisk, because I wasn't doing it to you because I didn't want you. I wanted somebody else. But thank you for continuing to want me because now I can want you back. You led the relationship. It's such an icky, Again, I don't know if situationally there's any way not to be the bad guy in that situation, but there's just something really fucked up about that. But he's able to reel her in again. Thank you for validating me and affirming me and making me feel wanted and yada yada, because that sounds like the core issue. He doesn't say, at least on camera, a whole lot about really wanting her. It's just like, thank you for making me feel good. And it's just like, ugh. Let's do this, essentially. Like, I'm here with you, whatever. And meanwhile, Paul proposes to Micah's horrible ass, and she says yes. Shocker.
Oh boy.
Again, I just said I'm gonna try to not laugh at men's pain, because men shouldn't have to feel that they have to be 100% all the time. But the part of the reason why I'm laughing at Kwame, though, is because, again, he's gone past like the vulnerability part. He's gone past the like crying part. He's on full on sinister villain arc, because in comes Paul, super excited because she said yes, right? And he's like, congratulations. Yeah. It's almost like cartoonish, like, in a way. Again, reminder, it is like him working through his pain. So I'm trying to be, I don't know. His feelings are understandable, and he's doing the best he can. I don't know if this is the next day or what's going on, but one of the days, Bliss is actually in the kitchen making cupcakes, because apparently today is Zach's birthday. And if you recall, Zach is mostly talking to Bliss and Irina. And Irina, again, is terrible. And she forgot it was his birthday, didn't get him anything for his birthday. She sees Bliss in the kitchen and she's like, oh, she's so wifey. She goes up to Bliss and is like, hey, you can say no if you want to, but like, I forgot his birthday. Can I borrow a candle? And Bliss is like, did you didn't get him anything like before this? And she was like, no. And she was like, yes, no, this feels really weird and icky, and I feel very awkward that you even asked me that, which is very fair, because like, what, you see me doing a thing for him because I care about him, and you're like, oh shit, I forgot. Her asking that seems to be a part of a bigger issue that Bliss seems to be having with Irina, and just the other women in there having issues with Irina, because though this seems possibly smaller than the reaction that Bliss ends up giving, she's talking to another woman and she's like, she better not talk to me. I can't stand that chick. So I'm sure Irina was probably being a menace throughout the entire experience, but this is just what we're seeing. So Irina is the first to go into her date with Zach. Quick. Happy birthday. I wish I could have gotten you like balloons and a cake and stuff like that. I want you to know that you're incredibly special on this day. But then at some point she does actually admit that she forgot his birthday. And then somehow we get to her issues with Bliss. For some reason, Bliss doesn't like me. There's just this really weird energy or whatever. Zach, for some reason, I do not understand this, but Zach seems like very troubled in particular by them fighting. I care about you both, so it does hurt me to hear that things are getting very contentious. They do more of like his connection with Irina, and I'm really confused by it. He seems to think that he sees deeper than her like hard facade. He's like, I know you're a good person and you have a good heart, and like I see it in you, and like I understand that sometimes people have a hard time seeing it in you, because sometimes people have a hard time seeing it in me, and like I really resonate with certain things. No one is that awful without being incredibly pained on the inside. So I'm sure that there's parts of this that to some degree are true. Overall, I'm still not understanding much of the connection between the two, but apparently there is one. And also he ends up saying something along the lines of like, he really trusts Irina, which again, I don't know how we got here. Again, there's a lot of conversation that we don't see. That seems to be like a big component of why he likes her. He feels innately able to trust her, which is something that he's not easily able to do. So then after that, Bliss comes in and she gives him the cupcakes and he's like, oh my God, this is so thoughtful. Yeah. Comes the conversation about Irina. Bliss was a lot nicer about it than I would have been, but she's like, she has this very icky sabotage, mean-spirited vibe. Zach is like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I could see myself with either her or you. And Bliss is like, look, I understand that. This is also a test for me because it allows me to know where your judgment lies, how you're able to judge people. Because if you pick Irina, it shows where your priorities lie and you're gonna regret it, essentially. I don't know if she says that explicitly, but that's what she's hinting at. Whatever. But that's the end of episode 2. Episode 3, Micah and Paul meet for the first time. They see each other for the first time and they seem to really like each other, at least from the get-go, which is great, whatever. Marshall and Jacquelina get engaged, which is no shocker to me. We barely saw Josh. Again, basically Marshall's like, he don't matter, I'm marrying you, which is my point anyway. He's a grown man. He'll get the gist if you're engaged to somebody else. You don't have to do the whole thingy or whatever, which is very fair. Meanwhile, Kwame is trying to convince himself that he really, really likes Chelsea. Simply, again, because Chelsea likes him. He ends up singing for her. Oh God, and is it bad? It's really bad. It's awful. He brings his guitar out and he's somehow flat and sharp at the same time, and it's incredibly cringe. But she liked it. She thought it was very heartfelt. But there's also a part of the song that makes me wonder, is it a song that he made for Micah? I don't remember which part it was off the top of my head. I'll have to look at the clip, but
she said that we gon' have to wait a couple days, but I just wanna show her now.
Back to Zach and Irina. He lets her see a bunny, like a stuffed bunny that he had from childhood. He found it in his mother's old things, and it's very precious to him because it was the one thing that he had that was an inkling of stability as a child. It kind of came with him wherever he went. So it holds a very special place in his heart. She then asks if he showed this to Bliss as well, and he says yes he did. And she was like, well, now I don't feel special anymore. And then she's like, well, what does she have that I don't have? Like, again, she's giving very insecure, pick me energy. And he says that he's very innately drawn to Irina, but he does have some concerns that she may be, and his word choice are very interesting to me. He says, you may be a bit more vicious than I am. And also there's something to be said that Bliss does not like you.
You're a little bit more vicious than I am.
Oh my God, you think I'm vicious? Do you really say that? Do you really think, after the experiences you've had with me, can you really say that I'm vicious? Now he's gonna be too busy trying to placate her and satisfy her that he's not gonna listen to the words that are being said by Bliss about her. Again, because he's like, I can see beyond your very hard exterior, that you strike me as the type of person that feels very, very deeply, and that I can see that through the hardness you would hurt somebody if they hurt somebody you care about. And she's like crying. She's like, whoever you choose, whatever you do, I will think the world of you. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you're tall or short or whatever. I think the world of you, blah, blah, blah. Back at the men's quarters, Zach talks about how Irina is great, but she seems immature, seems to be picking fights, particularly to win, and Bliss doesn't like Irina. There's some indication that Bliss thinks that Irina is a bad person. But again, going back to this weird, where he's basing this, I don't know. He says, I trust her. And again, trust is very difficult for me. So it's kind of hard for me to just ignore that. I trust her. Jacquelina and Marshall meet, and it's really cute. They're adorable. I don't have much more to say on that. Later, Irina and Bliss decide to put their differences aside. Well, particularly Bliss calls Irina over and she's like, we should put our differences aside because at the end of the day, this seems to be impacting Zach, and I want to do this for him, but I also want to do it for us. We shouldn't have to be like this, And then later, when in a date with Zach, Bliss tells him that that's what she did. She called her over. But Zach decides to end it anyway.
Are you breaking up with me?
Yeah.
He chooses Irina and then starts sobbing about it, which, if you've ever been in a situation like this, is very strange. He's crying as if he's the one getting broken up with, but he's like, I really do love you. This seems to be a very difficult decision for him to make, but this is where he's going. This is where his heart is leading him. And she's like, yeah, I'm happy to have known you and I hope you find happiness. You know, she's sad about it, but like, what can you do? Kwame proposes to Chelsea. Girl, run. He says something along the lines of like, though you weren't my first choice, you're the one I needed.
I'm sure we both came here with what this perfect idea or perfect thought or perfect process would be, right? It went from what was perfect to us to what we actually needed.
Girl, run. Zach proposes to Irina with another horrible song. Please stop singing, all of you. And then Chelsea and Kwame meet and they seem happy. She seems happy. He seems like a liar. Episode 4, Irina and Zach meet. And she does not like this dude from the jump, like from the minute she sees him. Didn't she just say like, I don't care if you're tall or short, whatever you look like, it doesn't matter. I will think the world of you. She did not want him to touch her. She was like, you don't blink enough, which I feel called out because I've definitely said that before. You're creepy and you look like a fictional character and you're a weird cartoon, like quick succession. She was just like, and like, she won't let him kiss her. He can't really touch her, can't hug her, nothing. So that's the couple. We got Chelsea and Kwame, Tiffany and Brett, my favorite, Jacquelina and Marshall, which I'll say like runner-up favorite because they're very cute together, Micah and Paul, and Irina and Zach, who are not gonna make it. Like, everybody can tell from the jump she can't stand that motherfucker. So now it's time for the honeymoon of sorts now that they've been engaged, and they go off to Mexico. Irina and Zach are incredibly awkward. She seems to be clinging very hard to his trauma bunny as a shield between them, and it's so painful to watch. It's like she is visibly and vocally uncomfortable, and he looks like he doesn't know what to do. And this ends up being alluded to later, but he's like, I'm really confused because like when the cameras are off, she'll be more touchy with me, and we've kissed. Any other time, she's just like, Brett and Tiffany are having a great time. It does suck to see people live your dream though. She got a fat ass and a nice looking fiance. Marshall and Jacquelina are doing fine, but there is some point later that she kind of says to him like she's concerned that she's gonna push him away again. That thing that I was like, oh. She gets really in her head about going back home. Apparently she has a rough space going on. Things are rough with her family in particular. And she's like, I love my family so much, but my family's not perfect. I'm thinking about family. I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about all that shit I have to go back to. They don't really talk anything specific about her family situation, which they don't have to. It shows that Marshall, at least in this moment, is very present with her, and he holds her and he comforts her and he's there for her. This isn't funny, but it did make me laugh that the intrusive ass cameramen were like, oh, you see that? That's a money shot. You see that real raw trauma? That's that good. Meanwhile, Kwame is still lying to himself as well as Chelsea about how he feels about meeting Micah. Soon, all the people will be able to see the people that they were talking to on the other side. And he asks Chelsea if it would be okay for him to talk with her for a bit. Like, how would she feel about that? And she's like, I mean, it's fine. And then eventually they have said cocktail party, meet your exes, so to speak. And that's where he sees Micah for the first time. And he's like, I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't really matter what she looks like. I was so attracted to her in the pods that I'm incredibly attracted to her now, which is not unreasonable. But you have a fiance, you gonna have to break that right now. Break it immediately. Stop. But once he does meet her in person, she does like hit him with the like, I want what's best for you, and I just want you to be so happy because you're genuinely like an amazing person. You know, she does that whole like spiel about like, I just care about you, and if you ever need to talk, you know, I'm here. Chelsea makes you happy because I think, you know, she was the one. And it's painfully obvious through this entire conversation that Kwame is so much more into Micah than he is his own fiance. It's like written all over his face. It's so embarrassingly obvious. Like, and seeing her and giving her a hug and talking with her, this seems to send him into a bit of a spiral because he's like, this was the person I wanted to marry, you know? And look, I'm not naive, right? I understand that this was a very expedited process. It's kind of hard to just shut those emotions off or whatever. But At the end of the day, you are engaged. And if that's not going to be your focus, don't get engaged. Later, Micah and Irina talk about their first time seeing their partners. And Irina is like, I am not attracted to Zach at all. I think he's weird and strange. And she actually kind of ends up saying something along the lines of like, I think your fiance Paul is hotter than Zach, which is weird to say considering that's your friend's fiance. And then Micah says something along the lines of like, at first he was not my type. Like I saw him and I was just like, oh, he's not really my type. And she's like flabbergasted. Irina's like, really? He's so f***ing hot. Like what the fuck? And they just have a lot more conversations that are very like high school adjacent, very catty. They laugh about how Kwame wanted Micah so bad.
Do you remember that moment when Chelsea was like trying to talk about Kwame and you were like, wait, what? You mean the guy that was gonna propose to Micah last night? She goes, anyways.
Just, yeah, vibes. Very off. Very off. This is very like 19-year-olds drama. And this is where things start to devolve because, again, as much as Kwame likes to lie to himself, he's still very hurt about the whole Micah situation. And he doesn't seem to like Irina. Again, we don't see what gives him so much heat towards her, but she's pretty awful. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was like awful throughout the whole night. But Irina goes to Kwame and she's like, can you get me and Micah some shots? And he's like, no, you can go get it yourself. They go get the shots. They're like, oh my God, you're so mean. What are you so mean for? And then Micah gets on the ground and they do a shot and she's like, a shot to a failed proposal. Yikes, that's rude. That's rude as f***. Like, why would you say that? For obvious reasons, he's like, why the f*** would you say that? We know as the audience, he's not over it because he ends up talking to Brett about it for a hot ass 5 minutes on camera. So who knows how that conversation was before. And he's just like, you know, I really care for her. I really care for her. Blah, 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 blah. And so when she does that, again, that's a shot to the heart, man. And he is pissed. He walks off. Because in fairness, what else is he supposed to do in that conversation? But Kwame goes up to Mike and he was like, can I talk to you for a sec? And she's like, what? Oh my God. Like, what? And then when he's like, what you just said, why would you say that? That's really f***ed up. It was a joke. Do you think I'm malicious? What? And then, again, she's very similar to Irina. That's why they get along, but she's better at it than Irina is because she's somehow turns it into like, I care about you so much, Kwame. I would never, ever disparage you, even though I just did. I would never do that. What I felt for you was so genuine. Oh, and you can see it on his face. He just dumb, just stupid. Obviously, like still visibly putting his like curl up here. He's like, visibly still in love with this woman. And they're like touching hands and she's like in your heart and she puts her hand like on his chest and stuff like that. It's weird. Right in front of his fiance, by the way. And Chelsea is like clocking it and she's like, what the f*** I gotta talk about for 20 minutes? All you have to do is say a quick, that wasn't cool what you did. I don't appreciate that. And just call it a day. Why are you having this long ass conversation? You kiki, ha ha ha. What you got to talk about? And then eventually she just gets upset and leaves. Cause what the f*** else is she supposed to do? I would. The hell? And that's the end of the episode. Episode 5. The show is so messy. Starts with Irina, Micah's best friend, flirting with Paul, who is Micah's fiance. It's really weird. It's hard to read whether or not Paul is understanding it as flirting. He could just be like chatting it up, being jokey, but it's obvious Irina is flirting. It is gross. Zach sees it too. He's like, she's very weird. Like she's affectionate with me off camera again. And then once I'm around her, she's like weird, super weird and distant. I don't know if this is gonna make it. We should just probably end it soon. And I'm like, maybe. It should be pretty obvious at this point. She hates you. Anyway, back at the hotel, Kwame and Chelsea talk about what just happened. She was like, why couldn't you just move along? Why was this a very long conversation? It did not have to be. And I really appreciate that for the most part, she was able to weed through the bullshit. And she's so like direct, strong, no, called it, no.
It wasn't my intention to belittle anything about what we have. But like, if that ever happens, like, you have to know that there's serious reason and intent behind what I'm doing.
No. She's very good at doing that in real time. And that's a talent. That comes from years of dealing with people full of shit, usually. What was I supposed to do? Just like walk away? And she was like, yes, you were. He's like, I didn't get closure, you know?
Closure is a great thing.
Did you feel like you got closure tonight with her?
Not fully, but enough.
Oh my God.
Heavy.
That's over. It is over. You're engaged to me. Walk into your new life. That's over. Don't disrespect me again, or we're gonna have problems. Later, Jacquelina and Marshall talk about meeting everybody. And I wasn't gonna even bring this up, but I just love this clip. It's hilarious.
Zach is a weirdo, and Irina's Irina, the peasant. Someone who's just a weirdo. Someone who just does dumb shit for no reason. I don't like that.
Thank you for this, Jim, Jacquelina. Zach and Irina have a conversation in which he's like, again, you don't feel invested. You feel like you don't like me. If that's the case, if you're not attracted to me and that's like a deal breaker to you, then let's just end it. And in the midst of him talking about this, she like puts a pillow over her head and they just never reach a resolution in that conversation. And they somehow shockingly do not end in that conversation. I don't know. So later when he talks to Paul about Irina, Paul asks if, you know, Zach, have you considered talking to Bliss? Like, have you considered contacting Bliss again? And he says something that is very thoughtful and considerate. He's like, I don't want to do that because Bliss deserves someone who chose her. But of course, yeah, it's something I've considered because duh. Meanwhile, Kwame is still going on about Micah, about how upset he made her. And he ends up talking to Brett about it. All that energy I've been spending on Micah, I should have been spending with Chelsea. But then he continues to go on and on about the bad energy with Micah and how, you know, she hangs out with Irina. You know, you are in a way related to the company you keep and yada, yada, yada. And then Brett is like, then let's stop talking about Micah. She is irrelevant. You are engaged to a whole nother woman. Focus on that. And then Kwame's like, yes, I'm going to cleanse it and let it go. Micah, noticing that Kwame seems to be more distant with her these days, possibly because of his having an argument or something with Chelsea. Oh, the energy's kind of weird and it feels like they're kind of overcompensating or whatever. And she's like, I don't know what could have caused the argument. Again, I hate that like fake oblivious catty shit. It's really weird. Since there's this weird energy and I don't really know where it's coming from, I'm gonna go over to talk to Chelsea to clear the air. So they talk, they're cordial, they're not, you know, fighting or anything. And Chelsea's like, the issue I had is because I didn't know what was going on. He went over there to tell you that wasn't cool, and somehow it turned into a 20-minute conversation of y'all like laughing and chatting it up and yada yada yada. And Micah's like, oh yeah, I could see that. I could see why that would be upsetting. And before they can really like hash it out though, it starts to rain and that is cut short. That seems to be enough of a conversation that satisfied Chelsea, so that's the end of it. Back at the hotel, Irina and Zach finally decide to call it quits, which is amazing they got this far. The entire breakup is really awkward, but also incredibly funny. It's just Zach going like, this has been terrible. We're sitting here acting like people who have been married for 20 years and hate each other. She's like, you know, yeah, I'm surprised it lasted this long. I wanted to say no the moment I saw you. I don't know, maybe you should go with Bliss because like obviously she was the better choice than me, so maybe that's where you should have went with it. This whole conversation was a mess. It really was. She was like, if you're concerned about me, don't, because go talk to Bliss, because yeah. And I think around this point, you know, having talked to Irina about it, talked to Paul about it, I think Zach is like, I really have been considering reaching out to her, but I hesitate because of what he said before. Somewhere around this part though, if this couldn't get messier, she starts to mention that one of the big things that was like the final straw was that she had a good conversation with Paul, her best friend's fiance. I realized that I never gelled this much with Zach, and actually like I'm really like so inspired by the conversation I had with Paul. It starts to get really weird where it's kind of obvious she definitely wants Paul.
I thought about him a lot in our conversations, and then seeing him yesterday, like I literally could not sleep like all night. I really like him.
Zach could see it. He was like, I'm not blind. I saw you. She's like, oh, ha, 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 but there's a problem. He's engaged to my best friend. Like, that's not funny, bitch. And, you know, the feelings themselves aren't the problem, right? You can't control how you feel. It's what you do. She don't have a great track record. Let's just say that. And the episode finally ends with Zach back in Seattle, and he meets up with Bliss, and that's them meeting for the first time. So I made the wrong choice. You know I did. I know I did. And that's kind of where it ends right there. So we'll see how Bliss ends up feeling about it. If she wants to continue seeing Zach, we don't know. But that is the first 5 episodes of Love is Blind 4, baby. Messier than never before. And I'm so excited to see it. I think I'll come back in like 2 weeks and talk about the next like 6 episodes will probably be out by that time. And I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. So if you like this video and want to see more Love is Blind this season, feel free to put that down in the comment sections. Like the video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. Next week, we'll be talking about another movie. I think I'm finally going to get around to talk about Pearl, because I told y'all to remind me, and y'all have. Thank you. Y'all actually remember to remind me. So next week, let's talk about Pearl, because that's a mess. And also because last week we talked about that horrible movie that was so bad that I needed to put bleach in my eyes. So I need something good on screen. Anyway, that's all for today. Bye.